It had been almost a year since I had last seen Jacob, and every day without him felt like something was missing. We grew up on the same street, practically raised together. My mom used to say we were joined at the hip, laughing, fighting, making up, and sharing secrets no one else knew. But life had taken Jacob across the country for work, and even though we promised to keep in touch, things hadn't been the same since he left. Every morning, I'd walk past the bench in the park where we used to sit for hours and talk about everything from high school crushes to our dreams of traveling the world. I'd glance at the coffee shop where we always met on rainy days, his hot chocolate order echoing in my mind. "Extra whipped cream, please," he'd always say with a grin. And I'd always roll my eyes, pretending he was ridiculous, but secretly, I loved it. When his birthday started approaching, I knew I wanted to do something special. Not just send a gift through the mail or a simple text. I wanted to remind him of everything we shared. The friendship, the moments, the laughs. I wanted him to feel missed, remembered, and loved. So I started planning. It wasn't easy figuring out how to surprise someone who lived in Seattle when I was still here in Denver. I called his sister Megan and asked if she could help me plan something. Thankfully, she was more than excited to be part of it. She promised to keep Jacob's calendar clear on his birthday weekend and make sure he didn't make any other plans. I spent 2 weeks preparing everything. Digging through old photos, picking out memories, printing little notes with inside jokes, and gathering pieces that represented our bond. Then, I booked a flight, packed my bag, and carried the gift I had worked so hard on. A custom memory box filled with pieces of our past and something new that I hoped would be part of our future. The morning of his birthday, I arrived at his apartment complex just as the sun peeked over the horizon. Megan met me at the door with a big hug. "He's still asleep," she whispered, giggling. "You ready?" My heart pounded as I walked into the apartment, gift box tucked in my arms, nerves building. I hadn't seen Jacob in person in almost 11 months. Would he be surprised? Would he be happy? I stood outside his room for a moment, took a deep breath, and gently knocked. "Come in," his groggy voice called out. I pushed the door open slowly, and when he saw me, he sat up straight. His eyes widened, then softened with disbelief. "Emily," he said, voice thick with emotion. "Happy birthday," I said, walking toward him with a smile I couldn't contain. "I missed you." He looked like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. He jumped out of bed and wrapped me in a warm hug, one of those hugs that made everything else melt away. For a while, we just stood there, holding on to each other like no time had passed. "I can't believe you're here," he said, pulling back slightly to look at me. "You flew out just for me?" "I wouldn't miss it for the world," I said, handing him the box. "And I brought you something." He sat on the edge of the bed and opened the lid. Inside were small envelopes labeled with different years, 2005, 2008, 2012, all the way to 2024. Each envelope contained a little note, a picture, or a memory we had shared. There was a tiny toy dinosaur from the time we both pretended to be archaeologists. A faded bracelet from our middle school friendship pact. A photo of us at prom. And in the last envelope, something new, a small silver key. "What's this for?" he asked, holding it up. I bit my lip, nervous and hopeful. "It's the key to my apartment back home. I figured, if you ever wanted to come back, or visit, or stay, it's yours." He looked up at me, his eyes glossy. "Emily, this is, wow. No one's ever done anything like this for me." "I missed you more than I thought possible," I said honestly. "And maybe we were always supposed to be more than childhood best friends. I don't know. But I do know this. My world hasn't been the same without you." He stood up, took my hands in his, and looked into my eyes. "You always had this way of knowing exactly what I needed, even when I didn't." We spent the rest of the day catching up. We went to his favorite local diner, explored the downtown markets, and laughed until our faces hurt. That night, back in his apartment, we sat on the couch flipping through an old scrapbook I had brought with me. Page after page filled with silly drawings, pictures from our first trip to the mountains, and embarrassing snapshots from our teenage years. Remember this? I pointed at a photo of us in Halloween costumes. Me as a ladybug, him as a robot with cardboard arms. He laughed. How could I forget? I could barely move in that thing. And you had to feed me candy because I couldn't bend my elbows. We stayed up late, sipping cocoa like we used to, and talking about everything. His work in Seattle, my recent painting classes, the neighbors back home, even our old high school teachers. As the clock neared midnight, the mood shifted a little. There was a quiet moment, a softness between us. Emily, he said, brushing my hair behind my ear. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't moved away? All the time, I whispered. Well, he said slowly, maybe the universe gave us time to grow separately so we could come back even stronger. I smiled, resting my head on his shoulder. Then maybe it's time we stop wondering and start figuring it out. He looked at me with that same grin he had when we were 10, and he convinced me to slide down the biggest hill in the park on a piece of cardboard. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying I'm tired of missing you, I said. And I think you're tired of missing me too. He leaned in, forehead resting against mine. Happy birthday to me, he whispered with a laugh. I flew back to Denver a few days later, but everything had changed. We texted every morning and called every night. 2 months later, Jacob came to visit and never left. We spent afternoons rearranging furniture in my apartment, evenings trying out recipes from YouTube, and weekends rediscovering all the places we used to love. That small key I gave him on his birthday? It became more than just a gift. It became a symbol of the new chapter we were writing together. Some people say long distance never works. But I think when two people have a history like ours, full of friendship, laughter, and an unshakable bond, distance is just a test. And when it matters enough, you find a way back. I missed Jacob deeply. But now, every morning I wake up and see him beside me, I'm reminded that love, true love, finds its way home. And all it took was one birthday, one brave surprise, and a box full of memories to bring us back to where we belonged. Sometimes, love doesn't need grand gestures or fancy words. Sometimes, it only takes a key, a shared memory, and a hug that feels like home. And as we sat on my apartment balcony one quiet evening, sipping tea and watching the sunset, Jacob turned to me and said, This is the best birthday I've ever had. I smiled and leaned against him. The best is yet to come.